Alright, this is going to be the beginning of this next project. It's a '01 Honda XR400R 4-stroke dirt bike. I'm going to start off, we're going to rebuild the carburetor, but as I was getting it apart here, I noticed, actually should be able to show you, I got it up on my welding table and I was looking at the back of it. As you can see, the fender's pointing a little bit wrong. So what's going on with this is this back subframe is cracked and bent. Now luckily this rear subframe is removable, so it bolts on down here and it bolts on through the frame right here, and even where it bolts on you can see it's cracked. So we'll replace that, no big deal. I found one on eBay, so I got it ordered. Up next though, we're going to get the carburetor off, get it rebuilt, and just go through the whole thing. I'm sure I'll probably end up doing full tune-up, fluids, clutch, skid plate. The long-term plan is actually to make it street legal. We'll see how that goes. But for now, we'll get the air box and carburetor off. Alright, got the carburetor off and getting ready to take it apart. Now when you're doing something like this, take pictures of it before you take it apart. If there's any linkages or cables or anything, take pictures. Get yourself a clean working surface. Get a little tray to put screws in, stuff like that. It helps out. So this carburetor doesn't have a choke cable, which is the manual lever. Makes it a little bit simplified. Nothing's locked out. It does turn free. You see how this style of carburetor works. So let's get the bowl off and get it apart. Alright, doesn't look too terrible, but definitely some crud down in there. I'm sure there's passages and ports that are blocked up. So when you get a carburetor like this apart, what you want to do, this is the float. So as gas comes in the carburetor, this goes up, and then when it goes all the way up, it stops gas from coming in. So obviously it won't flood out itself. There's a needle and seat. I'm gonna get a light here so you can see better. Alright, on the linkage of the float back here in the middle, there's a needle and seat. And what happens a lot of times if these things sit, especially with ethanol gas, that needle and seat will be locked up and it won't move. This one is free, so that's good. So these floats usually just a pin, and the way this bowl is designed, this pin's not pressed in it's not pressed in or anything. When the bowl's on, this pin can't come out. So once the bowl's off, you can just simply pull it out. Float will come off. And there's your needle and seat. And pieces of junk. So it's definitely clogged up with stuff. So there's the needle. That pointed tip is what goes up in there and stops and starts fuel from coming in and out. Also, these floats, this is plastic, so most likely it's fine, but put these in a cup of water, let it sit. If it ends up sinking, obviously you got a pinhole and your carburetor will never work right. These will fill up. When you first get it apart, if it's been sitting in gas, you can shake it. If you hear anything, you'll know it's got pinholes. These are cheap. You can replace them. Alright, we'll get the top off now. Okay, that all looks pretty good. You see when you work the throttle here. It goes up and down. Oh, that looks good. Okay, next we're going to take this off. I believe this has got the jet on the other end of it. Okay, so this has small little ports. I don't know if that's going to show up or not. So there's small little ports in that, both sides, so through. And I'll soak this, and we're going to end up blowing compressed air through all that. to clear everything out. Set screw holds that in. That's your return spring. Comes out and there's your needle. Little E-clip. Looks like there's notches, so it's adjustable. It's on the third one down. So there is somewhere on the end of this. It's not terrible. So there's a choke. Looks like it's got a spring-loaded flapper. I guess maybe if it's got a backfire or something. I've never seen that. That all looks okay. It just needs sprayed and cleaned off, so I'm not going to disassemble that. We've got a couple more pieces to get out on the bottom here. Get a picture of this first. Okay, this has got some ports and a through hole. That'll need cleaned out. Sometimes you gotta watch when you take stuff like this out. There might be a spring or a seat ball or anything like that. So take it out and see if anything comes out with it. In this case, it didn't. Okay, this on the bottom, I'm guessing this is probably an air adjustment screw. So it's not inside the bowl, so it does stay outside of it. So on these, what you want to do is go ahead and slowly rotate it in and count the turns. When you put this back in, you want to match that turn. A lot of times on carburetors, you're going to start with 1.5 to 2.5 turns out from lightly seating and then adjust from there. So let's see where this one's at. Okay, we got half. 2.5. Yeah, 2.5. So 2.5 turns from seat. Okay. And it looks like there is a spring on that one. Yep. So, spring goes with the air fuel screw. And at this point, it can be sprayed down and cleaned. I might take this side cover off and see what that is. I've never rebuilt this particular carburetor, but if you've done one of these, or a couple of these, I mean, it's not, they're all about the same. Alright, let's take this off and see what's... We'll probably be putting this right back on. Spring loaded, so it might be a rubber diaphragm maybe. Yep. Okay, as long as it's not cracked, we're just gonna put that back together. Yeah, it looks okay. I'm not going to disturb that too much. We're just going to put that right back together. Big side of the spring goes on the diaphragm. And there's a small place in the cap for it to seat on. Alright, I'm going to finish this carburetor up. I got a basic rebuild kit. Everything on the blue rag right here is what it came with. Some O-rings, needle, and main jet. Let's see what size. 52S. Let's see what the stock one says. 62. That's springs. Okay, so basically what we're going to do, go through and replace the parts that come with this kit, put it back together. Okay, spring goes on this guy. Like so. got it back together. Get it on the bike now. Running good. Sounds good. Alright, back working on the dirt bike. We're going to change the sprockets in the chain next. So first up, you loosen the back axle to get tension off the chain. Alright, I got the wheel off, and I'm glad I took it apart. I was just going to change the sprocket and chain, but the axle and the bearings are completely bone dry. So I'll clean that axle up and inspect it, but it might have to be replaced. And here's the bearing. You can feel it, it's pretty rough. So I'll get these seals and bearings ordered on both sides. Alright, I've encountered the next problem. So there was a snap ring on this, but it just fell off. So it looks like they've had problems with it coming off, so they put some weld on the end of that shaft so the snap ring wouldn't come off. Well, the sprocket itself won't come off, so I'm going to have to grind that weld and see if we can get it going. Alright, so what's going on with this? There's supposed to be teeth like this all the way around, and that makes the groove for the snap ring. Well, obviously it was all wore off, so they had put some weld material so the snap ring wouldn't come off. So there's supposed to be the same teeth here on the outside ring, and the snap ring goes in the middle of that. So I come up with a solution for this next. All Alright, up next we're going to get the swing arm off. There's some bearings on this bolt and there is no way to grease it other than taking it apart. So we're going to get it apart, check the bearings, hopefully they're good, and we'll get it greased. So that bolt is seized in there. I'm going to try a couple things and see if I can get it to move. But this probably tells you how good the bearings are going to be. Alright, this swing arm bolt will not budge. Did some searching online and it looks like a lot of people have problems with this. Honda never put grease in there from the factory. So what I've done, the bolt is actually hollow. There's a hole already in this and it was close enough to the size, so I tapped it to 3/8/16. So that hole has got threads in it now. And what I'm going to do is basically rig up a puller. So I've got a bolt here, socket, some spacers. We're going to put pressure on it slowly, and from the other side I'll hit it with an air hammer and a sledge, and hopefully we get it to budge. So let's see how this goes. Alright, as you can see, swing arm's off. So I have taken a lot of things apart. Old equipment, stuff from the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, etc. Tractors that have sat outside from the 40s all their life. And this right here was a mess. So this bolt, swing arm bolt, the way it's designed, to grease it, you'd have to actually take it completely apart. And supposedly they didn't put grease in it from the factory. So it's got a bushing and a bearing. So there's a bushing there, and then there's bearings inside there. So the bolt was completely locked up. I drilled the end of the head with 3/8 threads and drilled and tapped. Put a big socket on the frame right here, and then put a bolt in to pull it. I got it to move almost an inch. Then the 3/8 bolt broke. So I welded a big 3/4 nut to the end of it since it stuck out enough. Even that wouldn't budge it. So I would put pressure on it from one side and then use an air hammer on the other side, and back and forth and back and forth. Then I let it sit overnight with pressure on it. Greased everything up. Still wouldn't budge. So did some more reading on forums online, and there was some people that even ruined their frames trying to get that bolt out. So it's just a bad design on Honda's part. So what I ended up doing was having to sacrifice the swing arm. So before I did this, obviously I got on eBay and I found one for $100. So, but the swing arm butts right up to the frame right here. So I had to torch the bolt. Now obviously you don't want to ruin your frame, so because of that I come about 1/4 to a 1/2 inch off of that and just cut the swing arm. So that should be a shoulder there. You see the shoulder here. So I cut with a cutting torch through that and through the bolt. After that I still had problems getting it out, but I would hammer it in, cut some more of it off. Then I was able to actually punch it all the way out the other side. So now going forward, when I get this back together, I'm going to grease everything, and it's one of those things that if you ride in a creek or something and get water up to that, you need to take it apart and grease it. So it just kind of is what it is. Unfortunately, there's no grease fittings. There's no Zerk fittings. You got to actually take it apart to grease it. This thing has never been apart. It's a 2001. Now the other problem with this bolt is it's a hollow design. So the threads that you can to try to push it out, you get an air hammer or anything on the end of it, and it just mushrooms it out, which obviously makes it worse. So I've got a new swing arm coming, new bolt, new bearings and bushings. Well, used swing arm, new bolt, new bearings, new bushings. And maybe this thing will actually start getting put back together instead of apart. Alright, getting ready to put the swing arm together. I got new bearings and bushings and seals. Bearings get pushed in, and there's a tolerance for each side. The outer is 310 thou away from the edge, and the inner is 220. Now if you don't have the right setup, they do make a bearing remover, special tool, and a puller, which is just like threaded rod and some spacers. But I'll show you how I got this one apart. So a 1/2 inch drive 18mm socket fits real snug. I got it in my big vise here. So put some pressure on it. Take that till it bottoms out. there you have it. I'll do the same thing to install. Alright, so when you install these bearings, put the part number out. So this is going to be the bottom one. So I start it on the small vise here. Get it as far as you can in there until it bottoms out. Alright, so I finally got this thing back together. I didn't film everything, but kind of worked on it off and on. It got pretty busy. But I got it back together and I can kind of go over everything that I did to it. So the rear subframe on the bike was bent. Replaced it. The swing arm bearings, the bolt was locked up, so I had to cut it, so I had to replace the swing arm. I got a used one. All new wheel bearings and seals, front and rear. New sprockets, new chain. The way that they had this sprocket held on was a snap ring and some welds, so it actually requires a bolt-on plate. I got that right. I was missing the case saver, got that on. All new rollers, new chain guide, new plastics. So these were missing completely. I got a rear fender with a light, luggage rack, new front fender. Up front here, the original brake rotor was getting ground down a lot, and I had all this apart to replace the wheel bearings and put it back together. It wasn't right. Well, they had the axle bolt in backwards, so the back spacing was wrong. So luckily I had a manual looking at diagrams to figure out what was going on with that. New front rotor, new brake pads, got a light up front. And it runs good. It doesn't show up on camera. It's a pretty big bike. I'm on my tippy toes getting on it to start it. Once I sit down and it settles a little bit, it's not too bad, but it's a pretty big bike. So something else I added to this bike, the factory kickstands mount on the frame here, they're always busted or missing. This one was, and the bracket that holds it on and everything was missing. You can find the kickstands, but I would have had to make a bracket. So this style of kickstand is on a CR model Honda dirt bike, and it mounts on the swing arm. I shortened it, added a wider pad, and modified the mounting tab, bolted it top and bottom to the swing arm, and it works good. This is a cheap knockoff off eBay, so that's the reason I went with it. I knew I would have had to make it work regardless, so that worked out okay.